Ladies and gentlemen, here we are again, and we've got two fantastic guests coming up, and I'm so looking forward to this session. We're here again at the ACHL digital event, and we have got two ladies who have specialised in transformation and change, and are also involved with two very, very popular flag carriers. So I'm so pleased to welcome both Janet Wallace and Jessica Tyler on board. Janet is the Director of Cargo Transformation for Air Canada, and Jessica is the President of Cargo and the Vice President of Airport Excellence for American Airlines Cargo. So ladies, big, big, big welcome. I'm so pleased to have you together.
Hi.
Thank you, Chris.
Okay, look at that, eh? Two smiling faces, so we've got off to a good start. Thank you for that. Now, ladies, I mentioned that you're both very, very expert in transformation and change. And obviously there was enough of that going on before this crisis. Can I just ask you both what your major challenges and experiences were when addressing change and transformation, and how has that changed now with the experience of the crisis, and also what's expected over the next 6 to 7 months? So if I may, I'll start with you, Janet.
Well, good morning. At Air Canada Cargo, we've been laying the foundation for many years to build a roadmap for transformation and looking at how we can evolve from a customer perspective. So we've introduced engineering into our operations. We've looked at the training that we provide all our staff, as well as the training that we need to provide our customers, as well as we've taken a hard look at what our key performance metrics are. As we find ourselves in COVID times, going through this roller coaster of never-ending changes, we really had to, pivot, so to speak. Everybody's used that word many times, but really pivot in terms of what our business model looks like. And I really feel that the foundation that we've been putting in place over many years has allowed us to work.
Nothing like being live. Nothing like being live.
Nothing like everybody trying to contact you at the same time.
There you go.
We really had to come together very quickly and deal with competing priorities. As a senior team at Air Canada Cargo, we had to very quickly say, okay, what is the business that we're in? What is the business that we're going to pursue? And continuously reprioritize that week over week, because the plans we put in place, they continued to change, and we were looking for leading indicators for our business, and they weren't really there. So I'd say, looking at the tools and efforts we've put in place over past years and really trying to catapult ourselves forward by using those tools.
Okay, very good. Thanks very much, Janet. And Jessica, from your perspective?
Yeah, Janet said it perfectly. I don't know that I would say a whole lot differently other than the word foundation that you used, Janet. American Airlines Cargo is on that same journey. As I've talked about before, we invested the largest investment in our history, really, to upgrade our entire ecosystem of technologies to implement the iCargo system from IBS. And we just finished that implementation, a 3+ year journey, back on August 1st. And so while it wasn't planned to be in and ready for this during this crisis, it sure has helped us. Again, to borrow Janet's words, pivot and make sure we're leveraging the technology to meet the ever-changing expectations of our customers. So the other thing I'd add is just the people side of it. So the teams that have been involved in not only creating that journey for us, but owning it, have been instrumental in helping us figure out how to navigate in this, like you said, short cycles of decision making, very iterative approach. We don't even do year-over-year comparisons. Speaking of KPIs, it's more like, what did June look like, and are we doing better than June? So we're really trying to make sure that we're looking forward and taking full advantage of that investment I think in a time like this where, thank goodness we put the dollars toward that transformation before this. We are now in a situation where probably the dollars aren't there to invest more, but what we can do is make sure that we're squeezing every benefit out of that investment that we just made. So it's a little bit different in terms of, I have a saying, invest without investing. So it's more about time and energy and people resources, and the brilliant team that we have coming up with ways to leverage the tools that we have to really work with our customers in this time.
I think I would add to that, as airlines, we're both airlines, we're so well positioned within the supply chain. We are well trained to deal with irregular operations and crisis. We know what that looks like. We know what it means to just find the work, go after it, fix it, move on to the next thing. And that is always attributed to the type of people that we have in place. And we have great people. Our industry has great expertise, a lot of input, has a lot of creativity we've seen in the past couple of months of, what can we do to solution many of the obstacles that are put in front of us, and the resilience that everybody has demonstrated, despite the fact there's a pandemic and we all have things going on in our homes or in our environment. People have managed to stay very focused on solutioning to get us through this, I'll call it a really bad snowstorm. It's like, I think it's an irregular operation with no end, and we're just trying to figure out, working through the overall supply chain, where do we need to be? What is the customer service we need to offer? And really ear to the ground to figure out who is our customer in all of this, and what do they need from us.
That's the other thing I'd add, Janet, is too that this has crystallized our purpose, right? So as supply chain experts and professionals, we get that we're part of putting food on table, bringing medicines to people, helping the world's economy move. Now the world knows it, right? And that has helped our people hang on to that purpose right now. And when you say the teams that have been, really been able to focus even despite all of the challenges in our own lives, I think it's because of that, because there's this sense of purpose, not only that we know, but now the world knows.
Yeah, it became very meaningful that we have a contribution to make, dealing with government agencies, allowing them to understand we have regular scheduled service, we can move medicines, PPE, all these really important things same day. In many cases, I feel a very significant level of contribution to what we can do very close to home, as well as to other parts of the world.
Yep, ladies, I'm sitting back there watching and admiring that discussion going back and forth. It was like watching a tennis final at Wimbledon. It was lovely, and I really appreciate it. You touched on things like agility and resilience, and also the cargo profile now has been established in the eyes of the world, which is fantastic. But it's also allowed people to profile themselves and leaders to step up and do things that they haven't been doing in the past. Now, the point you made about recognizing both of your sets of people in your teams, obviously huge amount of respect and acknowledgement to everybody that's done what they've done already. But as a result of some of the tough decisions and practical sizing, you both have, in your organizations, you've had to make some tough decisions, because at the end of the day, if there are so many aircraft being reduced, all those cycles of business that circle around that aircraft, they also have to be reduced. So how have you addressed that, and where do you feel you are with it at the moment? So if I can start with yourself, Janet.
Well, look, it's been an emotional roller coaster for me. So I raise my hand. I'm the softie in the organization. Every month it's been a different strategy as to how to deal with people, from putting folks on temporary furlough to offering voluntary separation packages, to then making hard decisions to make more permanent separations. It's been tough. And when you have a long career, there are people outside of your organization that are also being impacted, and they're calling on you and asking for help and support. it has been nothing short of a very emotional time if you're really on the people side of the business. And that's what our business is. You know, from my perspective, Air Canada Cargo is built on the backbone of really strong relationships with customers and our employees. And I go so far as to say, with our suppliers, we want and we do treat our suppliers as if they're part of the Air Canada family. They're an extension. So when we downsize and our partners downsize, that hurts everybody. It also it breaks trust to some degree, and so we have a lot of work to do in the coming years to rebuild that trust going forward.
Yep, yep. No, it's a tough time indeed. And Jessica, we spoke about this before. What's your the current status and reflection on those particular issues?
Yeah, I think as leaders right now, it's such an incredible responsibility to care for people during this time. This is like nothing before. I mean, we're sending folks off into an economy that isn't supportive of, good job availability. So it feels different to me. It feels more, it's heavier, right? These decisions that we're making. But the responsibility we have as leaders is to make sure we're being as transparent and open as we can about why we're making the decisions we're making. And I think, Janet referred to it earlier, we're really good at this. We've been through a lot in the airline industry over the decades and decades of different crises and different challenges, whether they're economic or terrorism or whatever has faced our industry before. This is different. This is longer. It doesn't have as much of an end in sight. At least, I did some reading last night and got a little bit of hope, reading a little bit more in detail about the vaccine. And I think that's going to be a signal for people to get back in the air. And so, making really hard decisions like we've had to, looking people in the eye who've built a career and built this built our airline, is a hard thing to do. But I'm amazed at the grace at which people did raise their hand for voluntary packages. Like Janet mentioned, we've done the same, retiring early, leaving an industry they love maybe a little earlier than they expected. And really, again, I go back to purpose so that, American Airlines can have another 100 years, right? Yeah. So the reason we all have jobs is the sacrifices of the people who came before us. And so to me, these sacrifices and hard decisions we're making now are setting up a business that will continue to have an important role to play in the world. And again, if you can wrap your heart and mind around that purpose, it may be easier to make, or less hard to make some of those decisions. I think we're not through yet. So we've been right-sizing the airline, both from a management and support staff perspective, but as well as our represented groups. We just announced, you probably saw a week or so ago, the intent to furlough, thousands of people. We are crossing our fingers that the U.S. government will extend the payroll support program to help people, right? To make sure that we get through this okay. And so we hope to have to unwind what we've just, the process that we've put in place to put people on furlough. We are hopeful that this furlough, which is a little different than ones in the past, we will recall people, right? We really do hope that the airline, that we're doing all the right things to make sure we have clean environments for people to have a healthy journey when they travel. And so our intent is really, we would like to, when we grow back, and hopefully that's, first quarter, second quarter next year, that we're able to recall people back to the airline that they love. Yeah.
And something that I hope to start looking for support from people like yourselves in the next 4 or 5 weeks is how to keep in touch with people that have been displaced and just keep them associated and attached so they don't feel intimidated as and when they get the opportunity to come back.
Yeah.
Now, as far as the issue on vaccines, So Janet, there's lots of talk about how they're going to come on, whether they're going to be frozen to start with, whether there's going to be different degree criteria, but the entire cool chain is going to have to be assessed from like an oversight perspective to see what the capabilities are for the distribution and indeed the storage. How well prepared, or are you in contact with government bodies or overseers to see exactly what the capacities are like in the airports in Canada and how the distribution will be done?
At Air Canada Cargo, when we built our strategic plan for 2020, we had in there, we wanted to become IATA CEIV certified from a pharma standpoint. And, this is a tremendous effort for an airline. It draws on a lot of dedicated resources, sometimes your top resources and subject matter experts. And we came out of the gate in January, putting together a team, working on becoming CEIV pharma certified. When we got ourselves to March, and we had to draw down on the schedule, we were putting people on furlough. The commercial department and myself, we sat there and we said, now more than ever, we have to become certified. We have to pull this over the finish line. We have to make every effort possible. We have to justify maintaining these resources. And we dedicated a team that worked effortlessly for a better part of 6 months. They'd already been working on it in 2019. This doesn't happen overnight. And then I went to IATA and I said, look, I realize you might not be certifying anybody at this moment, but I need to do this because my customers are going to demand this and I want to be ready to go. So I would say just from a quality management system, we're ready to go when that vaccine is ready. But also we've been working very closely with the government, explaining to them how supply chain works, how purchasing works, how certification in different countries and customs processing works, and what those lead times are, and those outside factors like PVG Shanghai, that truck road to get to the warehouse that was blocked for days. That's not obvious. And for people over here, they didn't know what was going on over there, and they needed our information to understand what the landscape looks like. So I'm very hopeful that, whether it be medicine to treat or vaccines, we're making the inroads today, building the relationships with the people that we need to, and getting our workforce ready to go. Like, I'm very optimistic that once something becomes available, that we're going to hit the ground running. It's about contribution. We have a role to play. And it's shared. This contribution can go across airlines, trucking agencies, boat if it has to, train. Like everybody has a role to play in this. Now more than ever, we have to partner to make this happen.
Exactly, Janet. Thank you. And Jessica, just a little segue there into part of your title, Airport Excellence. Okay, bit of a tough one, that one. I'm sure you were pleased when somebody attached that. But with that in mind, now looking at the way airports are seeing cargo in a different light, there's a certain opportunity for more regional or remote airports who can offer faster clearance and everything else to actually capitalize on this. Now, the traditional airports, and from an airport excellence perspective, are you seeing that there's more focus now on infrastructure issues and better planning from airport oversight with regards to access to the facilities, to perhaps slot times, better arrangements with the forwarding community, etc.? Even airlines or GHAs offering pick and drop or milk runs. Are you seeing that there's
absolutely?
Yeah.
Right. So when we started some of our cargo only flying back in March, we saw a new focus and involvement from our airports to make sure that we were set up for success. I can use Miami, Dallas, some of those, just the airport authorities that are getting involved in helping to make sure that as an airport community, right, all airlines, all handlers, all the trucking entities and all of the different players that make up the airline or the airport community are ready to go, and that we're communicating with each other and being, again, transparent across the role we each play and how do we better coordinate to make sure that we're all ready. You talked about CEIV certification. Late breaking news last week, we just received our certification. So we've been, you described the journey really well. Really heavy resources on experts and a lot of collaboration with IATA and others. And the auditor was here 2 weeks ago and went through everything and just received it a couple days ago. So we're very excited that that has come at the right time. We're happy too, just like Janet, that we started that prior to even knowing the urgency around it and the need for it. But the other aspect of that I would say in terms of airports too, like you said, access to facilities. So we're a passenger airline primarily, right? And so when you think about network planning, you think about moving people efficiently. And in cargo, it's not the same, right? So when you think about a cargo network, freight doesn't care about how many stops it has, as long as it's still efficient and can get to its destination on time. And so when you think about building a network for customers, we have to make sure that we're connecting coolers, right? So making sure that we have wide body connectivity where it needs to be to move all of the medicines and treatments and vaccines efficiently throughout the world. And that takes super focused partnership between all of the different entities that help American Airlines Cargo go. So we are both internally and externally focused on helping people understand that network planning for cargo in a time like this has to be different. We have to do it with a different mindset. And I'm happy to say that the work that we've done internally has shifted minds and thinking. It's helped even our smartest network planning folks understand the difference between moving passengers and moving freight and mail. And when I think about it, it's been tremendous. This is the first time in our history where cargo flying is actually seeding passenger flying, right? So we're having these conversations about where do we need aircraft going to make sure the cargo network is solid and serving its purpose. And then if we're able to put passengers on those flights, we do. And that's just a complete different environment. Great discussion and conversations internally. And that's really, our customers are really happy that we're pivoting, use that word again, and making sure that we're playing a part in this really important time.
Yeah. Okay. So to both of you, I would pitch something. Now, in my humble opinion, just an old man's outlook, I think, and for a long time, airports should have taken a more senior and a more disciplined role as to what goes on their premises, in their ecosystem, their community. And I don't think they did. Now, that's because they've been more worried about whether a carrier will fly in or will fly out or will stay in or will stay out. Now, I think if they came together, they could make it much more attractive and much more in demand for a particular area, what they could do. Now, are you both seeing that airports are grasping that opportunity and taking the lead? And one of the things we were talking about with Salem is we've had people talking about, the need to collaborate and communicate and debate and have diplomacy and everybody's opinion. And then there was the carrot and the stick or the fluffy tickler. I'm old school. And for me, it's a baseball bat. If you see something and you're told you must do this, there's much more of a chance that people are going to do it. But when the decision is left open to so many people to debate and disagree and dispute, that's when consumer confidence and everybody's confidence starts to diminish. And I think all of the governments around the world have been at fault there. So I'm not going to get into the politics. Now, I'm not suggesting that either of you would prefer to swing a baseball bat, and it's only just a little thought process there. But do you both feel now that airports should be saying, this is what we must have in our airport community, this is when it must be in place, and most importantly, they explain why? So, Janet, would you like to
Yeah, I think your analogy about the baseball bat, I think what you're really saying is that we need strong leadership and a strong voice to move forward to. So, I mean, the target within Canada is, you know, it's time to travel. Okay, it's time. We need to move things forward. There's a lot of precautions that we're able to take throughout the journey, whether it be the passenger journey or the cargo journey. Um, I think airports has realized there's no business unless they partner, and they need to partner with the airlines and the security companies and the
Yeah.
government agencies and the travel agency industry, the freight forwarders. Otherwise, there is no business. So I don't see one entity moving forward without the other. As you mentioned, collaboration, cooperation, very overused, but very quickly we need to determine what is the bigger picture, what is it that we need to have in place for all of our businesses to move forward.
Wonderful. You took my baseball bat, repackaged it, and made it sound acceptable. So I really appreciate that. Thank you for that. And Jessica?
Yeah, I'd add a little bit of a human perspective on this. So when I look at where we are seeing travelers feel comfortable getting back in the air and doing it in a civilized way, it is when the airport community has done everything they can together to enforce those best practices around keeping ourselves and each other healthy. So I can give examples of where that's really amazing right here in my backyard, DFW. Everywhere throughout the airport are signs encouraging and stating that it's mandated that you wear a mask. And it doesn't matter what airline you're flying, doesn't matter what you're doing in the airport, doesn't matter if you're a retailer, you're going to wear a mask and you're going to try to social distance and you're going to, you know, hopefully clean your hands often.
Yeah.
I have done a bit of traveling recently for both leisure and work. And I've also been in airports where there's zero signage except for American Airlines. So the minute you step into the, you know, the space that is Americans, you see all kinds of, you know, signs encouraging and stating what's mandated and when and how to best protect each other. But every part of the journey prior to that and after that, there's nothing.
Yep.
And in those places, what you see, it doesn't matter if we do our part. It really doesn't. Not for this virus doesn't care that you're flying American Airlines.
Exactly.
The virus wants you to move through the world in a safe way. And so when I think about it, we've seen a rise in assaults, customer on customer assaults, customer on team member assaults. And where we see that is when things are not clearly outlined for people.
Yep.
So when they think they have a choice, it becomes a very tense situation. And, you know, you have people that are very opinionated one way or another, whether this is, you know, a real threat or not a threat.
Yep.
And we just don't see that when the airports take a strong leadership role in mandating things and making it unacceptable to move through this community without doing the few things that we know protect people. We do see those assaults and other things in airports that have just not, or states that have not mandated things, who have not communicated clearly that we are going to do our best to protect each other. And I think that's key. So I you know, absolutely. I don't know that it's a bad, I think, Janet, I liked your translation of the bad into strong leadership.
Yep.
And when governments and states and communities are more adamant and mandate things, you see people over time accept that and do the right thing for the people around them.
Yeah, 100%. And that's what I'm saying. I think the communication and the profiling or the marketing of all of the good things that are being done, that needs to be done at every single airport and at every opportunity so people can see that there's a consistency. And I was lucky enough to moderate an airport's webinar based in Dubai. And some of the questions that came from people, they were saying, in the past, you take your shoes off at one airport, you leave them on at another. You take your laptop out, you leave it in on another. You take your glasses and your watch off at one, you don't in another. All those differences, even though there's reasons behind subject to the volume of passengers and the equipment that's been purchased, etc. People need to know why these things are different so that they understand. And I think governments, again, including the WHO, what an absolute pig's ear of an initial information about whether or not to wear the mask. My goodness me. And I applaud Cargo Lux now. I don't know if you've seen the freighter with the mask on. It's a great message. So fair play to them. But we've got to start being that clear. Now, Janet, as far as hygiene, so we've covered it, and as far as transformation and efficiencies, the one thing that I keep harping on, a little bit like an old Elvis record that keeps being played and played by somebody who loves Elvis, but why on earth are we not now reducing the amount of touch points of documentation as part of the digitalization and transformation? Why are we not doing it? Why is somebody, again, possibly an airport, that says, you want to do business in this airport, the welfare and the well-being of our people come first. We are now going to a paperless free environment from such and such a date, end of. Are airports and airlines brave enough to do that because they've got to address the forwarding community?
I think it's just been a slower education and a slower evolution. So, I mean, the starting point was health and safety of all of our employees, and anybody that was interacting with our employees, that they come in wearing the face mask and doing the hand sanitizing. We were looking at those as the first steps, and it took a while to get everybody to play ball with us. Then the next step was, okay, now we're looking at all the documentation that's coming our way. So the paper airway bills, the customs forms, security paper that's moving between the different departments. I think, we've all had it on our roadmap to digitize these documents and look at document control. And I would say we're moving forward with those plans, maybe a little bit more quick than we would have on our roadmap. Like we need to do this. We need to remove unnecessary touch points. So whether it's better pre-planning, moving more towards e-airway bill or e-freight, there's a lot that we can do, and I would say it's at the forefront of the projects that we have underway right now.
Very good, very good.
We have to do it now for a different purpose, the health and safety of our employees.
And that could be the one common sense catalyst that actually pushes something that made sense prior to actually happening. So I appreciate that. Now, on that note, Jessica, with the collaboration perspective in mind, the authorities, whether it be customs, whether it be any other regulatory body, they have responded quite favourably, and they've shown that they can do things faster than ever before. And it certainly looks that there are more enablers in every camp than there are blockers now. So it's a positive sign, and it's an opportunity to speed things up. Do you think customs and various bodies around the world are actually now coming together and will focus on that? Because some of the things that we've all had to live with, whether it's blue ink or black ink or whether it's one copy or 3 copies, I mean, it's ridiculous. So do you think?
So, yeah, I've talked about this before. There is literally nothing holding us back from making this a pretty much paper-free supply chain. We see it in other industries that the ability to do it, the technologies are there. It comes down to making decisions, and it comes down to leadership, like we've talked about. We fortunately, with implementing this new platform, we're able to move security documents and things to a portal that allows customers to load those into the portal, but no one's doing it.
Yeah.
Right. So that's on us. So how do we encourage the behavior? I think of things like we have a non-e-airway bill fee that we've implemented for quite some time, and that is encouraging the right behavior. But the problem is, so I still send my e-airway bill, I send my messages, but I still show up with the paper.
Yep.
And our people still feel like they have to manage that paper instead of just saying, like, I don't need it, I've got everything right here in my screen. So I think it's just about, I'd rather have a big recycle bin right next to the counter and say, dump it here and we're gonna recycle it for you. There's got to be movement. So we're doing some of the right things technologically, but behavior wise, we're not addressing the changes. And you talked about carrot and stick. So things like the non-e-airway bill fee, hopefully that encourages the right behavior. And I think at some point you just say, you know, I've seen other businesses do this. We're not going to interact with you unless you're doing it digitally. There's plenty of examples out there in the world where that's the case. And so we have to make sure that we're making those decisions at the right time. But it also takes kind of a critical mass, right? I've talked about this before too. In this industry, we're all trying to solve the same problems, right? So, and we're doing that individually with our own technologies and our own dollars. And at some point, there has to be, whether it's a governing body or, you know, like IATA plays the role in setting standards, there has to be movement that's collective instead of individual. That's the only way that you get over the hump. And so that's, to me, the next part of our evolution as an industry is we have got to figure out how to not, everybody has their own systems, everybody has their own way. This, you know, if I'm a customer, if I work with Air Canada, it's this, the expectation is this. If I work with American Airlines, it's this. How do we just say there's a standard of operating logistically? And I think as we look at data and the flow of data and security, we've got to get to a digital platform that allows that data to flow from the production of the thing all the way through the delivery and to the consumer, so that we have the ability to manage and monitor and track and keep the supply chain secure. And doing that with paper is ridiculous. We think we are secure, and we think we are doing all the right things, and there's so much more we could do collectively. I think the collective piece is the word I would use.
Exactly. And it comes back again. I mean, I don't mean to come across as a rough and ready, you know, old relic, but the baseball bat, you know, somewhere, somebody, they've got to stop representing, and they've got to stop not doing things because of the few that can't do it. And they've got to start now saying, this must be done. This is the amount of time you've got. And then this is when it's going to kick in. That's just my opinion. Now,
I think I would add that there's such a good example on the passenger side when we moved from paper to electronic ticketing. In my company, I was on the passenger side, and I was working through the electronic ticketing program, and we did bilateral agreements, right? There's nothing more important than passenger information, credit card information, personal contacts. And so we worked through that on a bilateral basis. And then that moved into, like, it created a large wave. And then everybody was moving on board. And then from there, it was no longer just about electronic ticketing. It was about advanced passenger information. So the passport details, and everybody had a view on how to share that information. But we had to gain some consistency. And at a point in time, it's like, this is the way we do business. It's electronic ticket. It's shared amongst different carriers, different platforms. And we have a requirement to share advanced passenger information to all the entities that require it. It was a wave. It started.
And that was 15 years ago, 20 years ago.
20, 25.
25 years ago. That's what I mean by the technologies are there.
Yeah.
Right. That's not the piece we're waiting for.
Yeah, and I've got to say, I was probably a pain in the butt to check-in agents when I'd turn up quite late, and I'd say, no, please, just give me the part. I'll make a run for it. I'll get there. And then you'd have to do the debate and the arguing and try and get round them, and then they'd be, you know, in an awkward situation. Now, you show your boarding pass, says you're going to go through security. It says you don't have enough time to get through, so they can say, I'd love to let you. You might be fit, you might be able to get there, but the system just won't allow me. And then when you look at cargo, all the late arrivals and, you know, cargo coming in too late to have preload and to optimize the load, just basic common sense issues need to be put into place. Now, how do you feel the forwarding community are with also now playing a part in that particular efficiency or transformation? Janet?
I think that I don't think we can do it without them. They have a very large role to play. And it depends on how the freight forwarding is dealing with the freight. Do they see it? Do they not see it? You know, are their bookings speculative or are they real? I think that from an airline or a handler perspective, we have a lot to do in terms of facilitating the pre-planning, going back to those contracts or those agreements and asking them what's really real, what's going to present itself on the day of. And I think there's a lot of steps that we can put in place just to ensure that the warehouse as a validation point, you know, they're just there to, yeah, it was booked as seafood, it is seafood, and it's traveling, and we have all the right paperwork, rather than it was booked as seafood, but really it's medicine, and now we have to get into, you know, making adjustments and getting approvals. I think the freight forwarding community has a large role to play in terms of how they speculate their bookings, and I think airlines and handlers have a lot to do in terms of validating that and pre-planning for that on arrival.
Yeah, and I agree. And Jessica, lots of the GHAs I've been speaking to, when I ask them the questions at the end, one of the things that they'd like with regards to help facilitate the issues is for the carriers and the forwarders who have the contract and have the, you know, the commercial agreement, is to have some code of conduct or code of practice that they both follow to make it a lot easier for the GHA then to feel comfortable with providing the validation or the verification detail back to the carrier and to the GHA. So I do feel sorry for the handling agents at times, and being one myself, I know. And then I remember as I was with a carrier, and you sometimes put too much pressure on. But I think that relationship needs a little bit of modification.
Yeah, I think, you know, we're absolutely collaborating and coordinating with our handlers around the world, and they're ready for better information flow. They want to provide that. They want to integrate our systems. So they want to make sure that information is flowing, and they do. They feel a lot of pressure. We don't stick to just IATA standards or the standards for things like dangerous goods. We raise it up a level, right? And so American Airlines has certain protocols and procedures and expectations, and that handler may be working with Air Canada as well, who does or doesn't have different ones. Yeah. And so, you know, and I think there'll always be some of that, just because of the attributes of products and things that you're promising your customers. But the more similar we can be in expectations of how particular types of commodities need to travel and how they need to be kept and monitored and tracked, the more that we can create some standards that those other expectations may be edge cases, right? Instead of you know, the bulk of the way that they interact with us. So they're ready. You know, again, the technology is there. So we're working, one of our big efforts right now, when I talk about investing without investing, we have the messaging capabilities now more than we did before to even transfer more information back and forth, really, with our handlers. And so we're going to start that effort with some of our larger you know, partners that we work with over the next coming months, and we hope that improves the cargo's experience for our customers.
Yeah, fair enough. And coming back to that wonderful title again, Airport Excellence, as a principle. Again, in an ideal world, I would see an airport looking at all of the tenants on their you know, in their community and saying, look, we want certain basic criteria to be in place. So anybody who's going to be a handling agent, you have to be able to comply with our airport's criteria. And then they should actually make sure that's in place. So that's everything. And if that then becomes something that's normal, then the carriers, they know exactly what's going to happen when they go into that particular airport.
That's right.
If they want anything over and above those basic criteria, then they would pay for it. If they're happy with that criteria for the consistency, then so be it. And it's their own products and their own pricing mechanism that's a differential on the commercial.
That's right.
What do you both think of that?
I think you just described it really well. I think the other, you know, I've been able to have a glimpse of what it's like, and I think Air Canada will too, as part of the IBS community, right? So there are, I don't know, 19, 20 different cargo carriers within this community that use this platform.
Yep.
And that platform, is a small glimpse of what it could be if there's several handlers in that community as well now. That's a new development in the last few years. And I think it gives me hope that there is the ability to standardize the way in which we work together and communicate information across each other. So I think you're right. Airports need to play a larger role. Where we see that in places like Hong Kong, right? In terms of the handling environment, the airport's involvement in that works really well. It needs to see, our handling partner there is incredible and does an incredible job for many airlines. And there's great collaboration with the airport. So there are examples where what you describe works really well. We just need more of it.
Yeah, yeah, and also things like pooling equipment, ULD storage, having certain slot times, certain criteria for decongesting and everything. I think there's a chance, that they could really take a broader influence in oversight. And Janet, you're just to wrap up on your opinion on that one.
I was just thinking to the second part of your thought, which was, the differentiators and that carriers that go over and above the basic categorization of services, I'll call it. When we look at what those differentiators are that we offer our customers as a product offering, our going in position is we're going to pay for the services that we can afford. So when we evaluate all the ground handlers, we're like, okay, this one has this one has this one, this one can go a little bit over and above and really meet a niche product offering that we want to offer our customers. And that's what we pay for. We pay for that little extra in that city because that makes sense, right? But I mean, truthfully, I really do believe that all of us are offering the community the same thing, just a variation on it. And I think the handlers do a tremendous job in trying to meet those requirements. And, their relationship isn't necessarily with the freight forwarder, but it's with the airline. And they do a tremendous job at communicating when some of the product offerings just don't make any sense in that location, or where there's an opportunity to offer a little bit extra, Yeah.
The last point I'd like to make for you both, and you're both very, very strong persons, is if everybody in the industry is given a new care perspective on the business that we operate, by understanding what happens if you say, I don't care, I want it this way, I don't care what you normally do, we'd like it done in this manner. If people are all now, and we're all in the same storm, but just in different boats, but if everybody is navigating across the same lines, it would make things easier. Do you think there's a chance for that care culture now to come in as a result of this damn crisis?
I would say we're in this right now. Like we're in it. Anybody who's in this business today and doesn't care, they're in the wrong business. We cannot do this alone. It's the community that's going to move the business forward. You have to care, and the baseline is it's the people, and the people are going to make the difference to drive this forward.
Okay.
It's Chris, when we talked last time, we talked about competing on health, right? So on the airport side of my role, it's been a bit disappointing that the airlines are sort of competing on this concept of health instead of collaborating towards expectations that can be consistent. Yeah. And I think we're kind of getting over that. But in the cargo world, like Janet said, I think we're there. People get that this is something that we have to, as we've been discussing with our customers and our partners, thinking about vaccine distribution, everybody wants to work together to make it happen. It is not about who can get more pennies out of their piece of the pie. It is about how do we make sure that as a community that we are meeting the needs of the world at a really critical time. And I have seen that collaboration. So I have hope that it's here and it's here to stay. Now, that doesn't mean we're not competitors. That doesn't mean we're not, trying to make sure that our balance sheet works out at the end of this thing. But we're doing it in a way that, that makes sure that the focus is on serving a need.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. And I think some of the practices with the PPE as it ramped up and it was in demand, and then you had ethical pricing and splitting it between what was necessarily from a humanitarian perspective and commercial, I think people started to realize that, they needed to pull back a little bit and do the right thing. So that's good. So now, ladies, as we come near to the end of the session, what I'd like to ask each of you is if you could tell me 3 things that you in your position as leaders and also your organizations would commit to help the supply chain. So I'd like to start with you, Janet. So what 3 things would you like to commit to?
Innovation. I think we need to innovate. I think we need to be transparent with within the community and with our suppliers, all of the touch points. And I think for our employees and our handlers, we really need to take a good stand on simplification. We have to simplify. We have to make it so it's easier to operate.
Okay, very good. And Jessica, the same thing, please.
Yeah, I'd say probably 2 of the 3 are similar. So I think about transparency is really critical. And that's to everyone, right? All parts of the supply chain. And to be able to get to transparency, you've got to have coordination and collaboration, right? So those words are a little overused, but pretty serious about making sure that we model that behavior across our partners. The third thing that I would say that may be a little different is diversity and talent in this industry and in our businesses across the supply chain. We're at a critical time where we have got to be able to attract and support the right types of people and thinkers to this, to be able to deliver on things like innovation and transparency. We have got to have a more diverse workforce. We have to have a good pipeline of people who want to be in this industry. And I think this crisis has shown the world that it's a really purposeful role that we play, and it's a really interesting job. It's a dynamic place to be, and we need to capitalize on that. We need to be talking to people, to talent. We need to make sure that we're developing once we get them into the supply chain, making sure that there's opportunities and development opportunities for people. That's the only way that this industry moves forward.
Yeah, no, fully agreed. And now on the way back, what would you like to have from the supply chain or the community that would help you in your challenges and everything that you need to address? So we'll stay with you, Jessica, on that one. What 3 things?
The same thing. It has to be both ways, right? So that may be a little bit of a cop-out answer, but to me, we have to have shared purpose, shared goals, shared direction. And so to me, the 3 things that I've talked about, the 3 things that Janet's talked about, it has to be both ways. We can't achieve transparency on our own. It doesn't work that way. We can't achieve collaboration and coordination across the supply chain unless everybody feels the need for that and believes in it. And we certainly can't continue to attract the right people and develop the right people if everybody doesn't have that as a goal.
Yeah. Okay. Very, very good. And Janet, your 3.
I want to say exactly what she said, but I'll add. I think we need to address the frictional barriers that we have within that community, and we need to go a step further in really building some trust, because none of us are going to move the business forward unless we really establish some trust and agreement to move forward. And taking a closer look at who the customer really is in all of this, and making sure that what we're putting out there meets what the customer is looking for. So looking at the different steps within the supply chain and saying, you know, this is what the customer ultimately needs, and who's best to deliver on those needs.
Very good. Ladies, thank you so much. We've come to the end of a period, and there was a point earlier on where I felt as if I was being furloughed or made redundant, because you two were going ping pong very successfully, and I thought maybe I should just sit back and listen here. But
Thanks,
thank
Chris.
you so much for your time. You both, it's obvious you care passionately, and that's what's so impressive. And both got a smile on your face, even though we're in the eye of the storm. And I'm pretty sure with your influence, enthusiasm and engagement, everything will be much better moving forward. So thank you both individually and to your organisations, and we wish you great success. Thank you.
Thanks for having us.